We present to you today Franconia Notch, 400 million years in the making. 400 million years of revolving seasons. 400 million years of days. Rainy days, sunny days, snowy, icy, bitterly cold days. Days like this day. Each day bringing a myriad of small alterations by water and wind, frost and gravity, ice and fire from the center of the earth. $400 million years of daily change. When you see Franconia Notch today, remember, it will never be quite the same again. These are ancient mountains, older than the Rockies, older than the Himalayas. When they were young, their peaks were jagged, their valleys steep and narrow. Franconia Notch was a deep rift between craggy cliffs. And then the Earth's climate cooled. More snow fell than the short summers could melt away. The burden of ice and snow accumulated upon the continent. An ice sheet built up and gradually swallowed these mountains up. When the ice retreated, the land was changed. The narrow ravine was a wide U-shaped valley. The jagged peaks were smoothed and rounded down to the pink granite bedrock. Water, once frozen in ice, now flowed, a new force of change, eating away at the granite that seemed so solid and permanent, dissolving the minerals, carrying them away. A process called mass wasting.
Mass wasting is occurring on the cliff behind me here on the mountainside, and this mountain is literally crumbling to pieces, as you can see by the pieces in my hand. These are the smaller pieces that get generated by this process. The larger rocks around me are also part of that process. The process began here about 12,000 years ago when the glacier left Franconia Notch, and since that time, nearly 70 million cubic yards of this material has been deposited in this talus slope.
Each pitted granite chunk catches the dew and the rain and dissolves into smaller and smaller pieces as natural erosion continues to reshape this valley. Just look beyond the talus slope for more evidence. Landslides act quickly and can change the scenery in just a few minutes. Rivers carve slowly and persistently. When you see Franconia Notch today, remember, it will never be quite the same again. Nature isn't the only force at work in Franconia Notch. People have changed this valley too. As soon as the glaciers retreated, people were in the area. The first inhabitants left signs of their presence in nearby towns.
Although archaeologists have found no specific Native American sites in Franconia Notch, we know that they were nearby. Prehistorically, people were traveling along specific routes that passed through the notches, through Franconia Notch, through Crawford Notch, Bentham Notch. Their lifestyle focused on following the caribou herds and regulating their movements with the movements of the herds. They focused on acquiring the furs, the meat, the antler, and generally trying to survive in an extraordinarily harsh environment. In order to survive in these environments, people had to have an extraordinarily high control over their environment, over their skills, over their crafts. They had to understand what's going on around them. This understanding, this sophistication, is the reason why they survived, and shows us that these people in the past were every bit as sophisticated as we are today.
For thousands of years, people have been in and around Franconia Notch, but we have no written record until the Europeans explored the area. The early settlers found the Baker River Valley near Plymouth an easier route to the coast, but by 1800 the northern settlements wanted a shorter journey to the trading centers of Portsmouth and Boston. In 1805, Francis Whitcomb and Luke Brooks were hired to survey a road through the Notch. And while getting water at a small lake, they looked up and discovered a face on the mountain. It was a man's perfect profile, comprised of 5 interlocking stones held to the cliff by their own dead weight. The mass was suspended 1,200 feet above the valley and reflected in a mirror image in the lake at the base of the cliff. The effect was a total coincidence of granite, gravity, geology, and geography.
I think that I felt, as a matter of science, that I was in the presence of an utterly remarkable, completely remarkable scientific and natural phenomenon. I know of no other rock structure in the world that was formed like the old man, that had so much weight, cantilevered out over a 1,000-foot high cliff, and it stayed there for, many hundreds of years apparently.
Within 30 years of the discovery of the Old Man of the Mountain, the first road through the Notch Wilderness was completed, and its first hotel was built, the Lafayette House. Franconia Notch was just beyond the doorstep of civilization. As word of the profile and this charmed wilderness spread, the Notch became high society's favorite vacation spot. They came in horse-drawn stages and carried trunks of clothing. By mid-century, the railroad ran from Boston with connections to Franconia. In 1853, the Profile House was opened, a grand hotel. Its wide veranda, a stage. The rich entertained themselves as they took in the views and the bracing mountain air. Vacations lasted a month or more. By 1900, the 6,000 acres that now comprise Franconia Notch State Park were privately owned. And when the flume failed to make a profit, its owners logged the mountainside bare. The Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests was formed around this crisis and launched a brilliant campaign to buy the land for the public trust. In less than a year, 15,000 people from all over the country answered the call to save a tree in Franconia Notch. It was New Hampshire's first great conservation effort. The forests of Franconia Notch are now under federal and state protection, from the valley floor to the mountaintops. The forests link us to our past, and each September and October they are transformed. At lower elevations, it's the oak and birch and maple that announce autumn's return. They latch their roots around rocks and dig wide, shallow footholds in stony soil. With elevation, the hardwoods give way to hardy scrub evergreens that cling to the mountainsides. They resist driving winds and hold tightly in sheltered overhangs. It is a precarious existence at this altitude, in this climate. On the forest floor and in the mountain meadows, delicate alpine flowers bloom briefly in their short seasons. Painted trillium, bluet, ragged robin, and bunchberry, colorful names and tempting to touch. But resist. The bouquet wilts quickly. A photograph endures. There's a system of challenging hiking trails to the summits of Franconia Notch. Their names promise of poetic delights. Bridle Path, Falling Waters, Greenleaf. But don't be fooled, these are serious and steep climbs across landslides, swift brooks, wind-scoured granite. The Appalachian Mountain Club maintains these trails, as well as 2 shelters in the higher elevations of the Notch. Some Notch trails require a special vision and are reserved for only the most experienced climbers.
Climbing has always been just a very personal experience. When I'm outside and I'm on that edge of the side of the face, I feel more alive than I've ever felt. It brings out, I really appreciate life that much more when I'm actually fighting for it on the edge, and here in Franconia Notch, we've got, some of the biggest and most demanding rock climbs in the country.
When we discovered Franconia Notch and then shared it with the world, we changed this place. It all began with that magnificent profile that hung cantilevered over the valley for at least 200 years. Suspended in time, suspended in air, the old man of the mountain defied both logic and gravity. It was impossible not to take this profile as some kind of sign in its perfect likeness of a man of strength and quiet dignity. 2 generations of caretakers looked after him, always knowing he couldn't last, always hoping their efforts might prolong his life. The same freeze and thaw action that created the profile would eventually be the agent that would bring it down.
We were sure that the old man was going to fall, and we were sure that it was not going to fall in our lifetime. My dad's the only one that won. In 2002, we buried my dad's ashes in the old man's left eye, and it was my dad's wishes to be buried with the old man forever. And indeed he is.
On a rainy spring night in 2003, the old man came crashing down. 7,200 tons of granite. It was as if we'd lost a friend.
I have great conversations with him. As a matter of fact, there was one time when I was getting ready to move over under his nose, and it was a little windy, and I really didn't feel too comfortable. And the old man said to me, "That's all right, boy, you go right ahead. You don't pinch and I won't sneeze." It's a very real person to us.
A lot of people ask about how my dad would have felt. And I think my dad would have been heartbroken to see the old man fall.
Because of the old man of the mountain, Franconia Notch has been revealed to the world as a hands-on primer on the forces of nature and time. The Flume Visitors Center is a good place to begin exploring this place. There are maps, brochures, and signs explaining the terrain and the features to look for. To discover the secrets of this wild place, start by just looking. Look up from the valley floor and imagine a river of ice a mile deep. Look out from a mountain peak and see all the way to Canada, across mountains and millennia. Look inward and feel lungs and heart expand in a moment of mountain stillness. More than 50 years of park development have made Franconia Notch a place visitors return to year after year. This is a place where families grow together and grow up together, sharing experiences and 1,000 memories. On the valley floor, beginning at the Flume, there's a self-guided walk through this chasm excavated by time.
About 50 million years ago, a basaltic magma began to rise from deep within the earth, and it found this particular joint and fracture in the Conway granite and rose and cooled in place within it. As it cooled, as typical of basalt, They formed a little blocky structures in the basalt itself. That was fine until 11,500 years ago when the glaciers left this area and the Flume Brook began to flow down through, using this joint, this fractured joint in the basalt in the bottom of it as a channel. The Flume Brook then began to go and take those little blocks of basalt out one by one and send them down the stream, thus opening up the chasm that you see behind me here.
The trail through the flume is never far from the sound of the rushing water. But light is whimsical and plays tricks when it arrives. At the pool, vacationers enjoyed these same sights and sounds 150 years ago. People used to listen to an old character, the philosopher of the pool. Today, little children scurry through the Wolf's Den. From Sentinel Pine Bridge, the trail winds through a boulder field of glacial erratics and leads back again to the visitor center. From the flume, there's a 9-mile multi-use path that winds through Franconia Notch all the way north to Cannon Mountain. The secure and scenic paved route crisscrosses back and forth across the Pemigewasset River from one end of the notch to the other. At the basin, the swift waters of the Pemi still bore away at a pothole, gouged out of the granite 25,000 years ago. It grows deeper and wider with every passing year and season. Rushing water swirls rocks and pebbles that scour the granite, shaving it away layer by layer, enlarging the arc, polishing the surface. Follow north from the basin to Lafayette Campground. Set up camp in one of the 97 sites and sleep soundly in the shadow of Mount Lafayette. These are the moments that bring a family together. These are the memories that last a lifetime. From this central location, there are trailheads to all the surrounding peaks for hikers of all abilities. Boise Rock is a glacial erratic, plucked off the mountain and left in this spot as the glacier melted and retreat. In the early 1800s, its overhanging south face sheltered a man overtaken by a terrible blizzard and saved his life. Crawl under it and imagine what that long night might have been like. At the north end of the notch, hike the easy trail up to Artist's Bluff and take in the view back down the valley. Just below the bluffs on a hot summer day, there'll be swimmers at Echo Lake. These cold, clear waters are also a fine place to rent a kayak and explore the wild shoreline. The Green Meadows on Cannon Mountain are ski slopes, the first to be engineered in America. The history of the sport is on display in the New England Ski Museum next to the Tram building. Here you will find old films, books, and artifacts. North America's first aerial tramway was built on Cannon Mountain in 1938 for skiers and sightseers. In 1980, it was replaced with cars with windows in all directions.
Beautiful day today. We'll start by looking west, which is out the other side from myself. The large mountains seen on the horizon are called the Green Mountains of the state of Vermont. And then out the back end of the car, the northern part of our beautiful state of New Hampshire. Out to the back and right, which is looking...
The tram car glides up from the valley. The sensation of movement comes only from the trees and rocks moving beside and beneath you. On the summit of Cannon Mountain, you'll want to explore the Rim Trail for views toward all the compass points. Step out onto the granite cliffs. Mount Lafayette's steep slopes and treacherous ridges are just across the valley. And far below, cars and buses move soundlessly along the valley floor. From the observation deck above the Tram building, there are unobstructed views of New England and Canada in every direction. And on any given day, you'll be part of a global community of visitors. When the wind turns cold and snow blows down from Canada, Franconia Notch comes alive for winter. Blanketed in white under an electric blue sky, the descent into the valley is one of the best side trips in the Notch. $400 million years of revolving seasons. 400 million years of fire and ice. 400 million years of days. Rainy days, sunny days, snowy, icy, bitterly cold days. Days like this day. 400 million years of daily change. Franconia Notch. When you see it today, remember, it will never be quite the same again.